class, very much so. We have another very special guest, actually. However, we have four special guests. Three of them are enrolled in the class. One used to be enrolled. But I want to revisit the conversation we had with Bill last week and this issue of. Well, first off, I want to go back to, hey, if y'all can put up I want to go back to Marie Lucy and the children in Brazil. If you did not get a chance to Venmo some cashola at our end, you can still do that. We did a nice job. The kids will be we were able to raise enough money, but we could always raise more. Every couple of dollars is something for one of the children, right? So feel free to just Venmos, like to reach a certain amount, but it doesn't matter. It's all good. Everything is good. But if you want to do that, if you have any questions about it, please let us know. Next slide, I want to go back to the conversation with Bill, and this what happened in Atlanta a couple days ago. It's deeply disturbing. I know that this guy who appears to be maybe an incel or something, I don't really know, is not saying it was rooted in hate, but it's rooted in self-hate at the very least. And but Bill wanted me to put that hashtag up, and if you follow that hashtag, you'll see people of Asian ancestry in the United States having very interesting and important conversations about the things that they are experiencing. And it really takes the conversation that we had in class to another level. And so lots of conversations on Clubhouse, lots of conversations in lots of different venues. So by all means, we want to just put that out there, because it's so deeply disturbing. And it's just so many different cases. If you pay attention and you follow, you'll see quite a number of things that are out there that are going on. So, okay. Today's class is called our Migrant Crisis. And I'm calling it our Migrant Crisis because President Biden while he and the Democrats were quite willing to look at this migration issue, especially with children on the border, and immigrants coming to the United States and trying to get into the United States, both legally and illegally or without documents. They were willing to refer to it as a crisis when Donald Trump was in power, but suddenly now Biden's referring to it as an issue, right? Or I forget how he said it the other day, but it's kind of like it's like an issue. No, it's actually a crisis, if you want to call it a crisis. For some people, it's very much a crisis, and I want to look at it, and I want to look at it in some different ways. And before we start, I want to say the following. Back in the day, I used to study immigration. In fact, when I was doing my master's work, when I was looking at, as I mentioned last class, I started really getting into Latin America and issues of Latin America. There were two different ways that I was going to go. One was to be an immigration scholar and with specific focus on undocumented immigration. And I'm going to use the word undocumented because that's just what we use around the world. But I was either going to be an immigration scholar or I was going to be a scholar of religion and the church in Latin America and development. And I ended up becoming neither, but I did spend 2.5, almost actually 3 years, pretty extensively studying undocumented immigration. And so I delivered papers at a number of conferences and wrote a number of papers and so on. So it's something that I've been studying now. So that makes it, almost about 38 years or so. But what I want you to know is it's a really complex issue. Okay, I understand it's a complex issue. So we're not going to take political sides here. This idea that we should open the borders to anybody who wants to come in, or we should close them down to everybody who doesn't have papers and so on. This is just an incredibly complex issue in conversation, and I'm going to treat it that way. And what I want you to know is that the people who, well, hang on, that's all. Just understand. Okay, I'm going to take multiple sides of this, and there are multiple sides. There's not just two sides. So let's bring our first volunteer in, who is Sean. If you can, yeah, his camera's on. We'll give it a second for everybody to get you onto the stream. Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity to fix my microphone. Sean, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
So you're a first year student?
Yes, I am.
And what are you studying?
I'm a finance major.
Finance major. Where are you from?
I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, went to high school in Bucks County, and now I live in Delaware County.
Do you have any experience with immigration at all?
Yeah, I'm actually a first generation immigrant myself. My dad was born and raised in Dublin. He moved here when he was 19 after he graduated college, and he's been here since.
Yeah. Wait, he's from Dublin, as in Dublin?
Yeah, Dublin, yeah.
Does he say Dublin?
Yeah, he still has a very thick accent.
All right, awesome, man. Well, hey, first off, can we do the first top hat? If y'all would do that. So Sean, why don't you do that while I go through. So the top hat's going up in about 15 or 20 seconds. You'll see it. Hey, can you, well, so I'm going to say a few things, okay, Sean, and then you will, and then we'll bring you back. We'll bring you back in, okay? Hey, so can you, Jeff, can you put the other, in niche, put that next slide up with the words from Trump. So y'all understand that it's really a bad idea to promote divisions in a society, okay? And immigration is a very divisive issue. And so these are some of the things that these are some of the words that President Trump used, that other people use, and certainly some Democrats use it. Really just sort of, but really responding to infest, right? Like a verb like infest and pour into and referring to immigrants as animals and rapists and murderers. And you remember when, you probably don't remember, but because this was back in probably 2015 when Trump was running for election, and he said that Mexico, it sends as the worst of its people, the rapists, the murderers, the thugs, and so on and so forth. And that kind of language, my friends, is just never a good idea. And because what it does is it promotes a situation in which it makes it very, very difficult to work out complex issues. And this is an incredibly complex issue. And you need to work it out. It's not simple. It's not black and white. And we need to work it out. And people all over the world are trying to work out the question of immigration. This is just a world it's a whirlwind of struggle for all societies everywhere. And it's been that way for thousands and thousands of years, and it will always be that way. And so one thing that I see, if we go to the next slide, when I see what it leads to are things like this, right? Which is really just bizarre in and of the face of it. By the way, it is incorrect to put the flag on things like umbrellas, okay, my friends? So if you do that, when you say like it's disrespectful for people to kneel during the national anthem, it's also disrespectful to put an American flag on an umbrella or a bikini underwear or whatever you want to put it on, your jock strap. I have no idea, but it's disrespectful. But anyway, looking at it leads to things like this, that kind of language. And my guess would be that these people who are, mobilizing in this kind of way, if I had to, and again, this is coming from me who spent, years and years really digging into the complexities of these issues. And usually the things that seem to be the most black and white and the most straightforward are the ones that are most complex. Like, for example, where do we go when we die, right? So anyway, this is like, first off, the absurdity of this, right? Which you wouldn't know, but I'm going to explain something. Like, deport all illegals and build the wall nice and tall, and then that assimilate. The fact is, today in the United States today, immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, strangely enough, are assimilating faster than immigrants at any point in U.S. history. So even going back, to long before Sean's father came. I mean, going back to the turn of the century in the early 1900s, immigrants today are assimilating much faster than at any point in history, and oftentimes undocumented immigrants. So so you can't keep people out. You just can't. That's just the nature of this. That's what part of the struggle is. You can build a wall as tall as you want. You won't keep all people out. You can't let everyone in. You just can't let everyone in. Although the truth is, not that many people want to come to the United States here. If they had a chance, we do these polls of people all over the world, and not that many people actually want to come to the United States and live here permanently. I know it's probably surprising to some people who think the US is the greatest country in the world, but the fact is not that many people. I mean, it's 140 million or so, but it's not the whole world. And the other thing is, it's never a good, and this is something for those of you who think that we should just open the walls and let more undocumented people, they should just be allowed to live here and work because they're hardworking or whatever the case is. It's never a good idea to have people living underground outside of the legal structure, okay? It's just never a good idea. You inside your society, you need to be able to keep track of human beings. So you don't want, right now we have about 10 to 11 million undocumented people living inside the United States. It's not a good idea to have that many people. Okay, just I'm speaking as a sociologist, I'm speaking politically, I'm speaking socially, I'm speaking in a wide range of from perspectives. That's not a good idea. Okay, so we can bring Sean back in for a second if we could. Hey Sean, what's like your gut feeling about I'm going to keep calling it undocumented immigration, okay? What's your gut reaction to it? Like what's
my gut reaction is I can understand the hostility with migrant workers here, because in a form it is a sense of like outsourcing. So one of the major issues being cheaper labor, understandably so, but they also have to make a living here. I personally don't have an issue with it, and I do think that there should be a due process of having them integrated normally into our society, getting a citizenship. Um, but on the other hand, I can also understand where the opposers are coming from.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool, dude. That's the best we can ever be, man. I get this. I see the struggle here, but I can understand this struggle, and that's just hold that. That's a nice place to be. So, have you ever thought about immigration from the perspective of American Indians?
No, I personally haven't.
Do you think your dad did when he? So I'm assuming your dad came legally, right? Did he win the lottery or something? How did he get here?
No, he had his last $200, and he just bought a one-way plane ticket, never looked back.
And then he applied for a green card, or?
Yeah, whatchamacallit. So he originally moved to Boston, and the carpet company he got a job with in Boston got him a permanent residency card. So
got you.
Yeah, he's not a citizen, so he's living on a permanent residency card right now.
Got you. Okay, so yeah, so he when I said won the lottery, it's like we give out a certain number of people apply just to, it's like a lottery. We apply. There's a certain number every year, number tens of thousands. It changes every year. And then we just pick names and like, boom, you win. You want to come to the US? And that's just how it's been that way for many, many years. A lot of societies do that, by the way. So the issue, what do you think Native Americans have to say about this issue, or American Indians?
I can't imagine they'd be too happy. I saw someone's comment in the Twitch chat saying they don't understand how we can call people immigrants when we were the ones squatting on their land. And thinking from that perspective, I would have to agree.
But it doesn't mean it's right, though, right? You understand? Just because American Indians say it, it's just like just if any person of a minority group says it, doesn't mean it's right. It just means if it's an opinion we never heard before, it's like, well, hang on, let me think about this. Let me see what they're saying. What's the issue as far as you can see?
As far as I can see, we took their land. They were, in a sense, genocided. A lot of them were killed in the process of us claiming their lands for our own Western expansion. So that's how I look at it.
Okay. And once again, I'm not pushing I'm not pushing a social justice perspective, right? Oh, because Native Americans have an issue with everything that happened to them, right? So if we could put up this if y'all Nish and Jeff, you can put up that cartoon. Just because Native Americans are have an issue with some of this anti-immigration rhetoric, uh, that doesn't mean that it's okay. So we should just open the borders, right? But this cartoon, somebody made it about 20 years ago, and it's time to reclaim. This kind of allowed this guy here, and it's like, yeah, that's like, okay, well, you're illegal, right? Well, but of course, we don't think about indigenous peoples as having ever really existed or even existing today. So put up the next slide. And I'm going to do the weatherman thing here. So here's one of the earliest maps of the United States. This is from 1685. And so, we can see some of the colonies. First off, in 1497 is where Europeans first landed in North America and what is now Newfoundland. So, I mean, the Vikings probably came over this way, but whatever. But 1497. And so this is this map. And now look, there's nothing here in the entire center of the country, right? So the idea is like, well, there's nobody here. I mean, there's not even a map. There are no borders, right? So the idea is like, this is a barren land, and these brave immigrants came and they tamed it, and they were able to, really finally, have this land and call it their own, right? Well, but hang on, but go to the next slide. This is a slide of, this is actually what the land would have looked like. Now, mind you, these borders here are just drawn in by scholars, historians of indigenous peoples in the Americas. But notice there's no border here between Canada and the US. There's no border here between Mexico and the US. These are more or less the nations, the most dominant nations all over these lands that have been living here for centuries and centuries, for millennia, actually. And so when the Europeans came over, they didn't come over to a barren land, right? They came over to a land where people were living. And they came over with this idea that they were going to take that land because they needed the land. And if we can go to the next slide, so that's just pretty big, first off, right? But the next slide is, so here's this grand rush for the Indian Territory. So this is from the late 1800s. And so this is now for new Europeans coming over from the US, like my ancestors, the ancestors of lots of people in the class. Now is the chance to procure a home in this beautiful country that was stolen. 15 million acres of land now open for settlement. This is land that's taken from indigenous peoples who were either killed or moved off. And this was the greatest genocide, the longest lasting, most extensive genocide in human history. And just look, this is all about the land. So these are the kinds of things that kind of get to go up, right? So people today, when I hear people who are really making these demands about, hey, and we're not going to do that next slide, so you can bring Sean back in. Sean, when I hear people, being really adamant about undocumented or illegal immigration, I'm always asking my Native American friends or American Indian friends, like turning thumbs, like, wait, what do you guys think? Like, what are you thinking? Like, who's illegal or what is this? And like that I'm illegal at some level, right? I mean, maybe I'm not. I mean, I'm not really, because I was born. I got a pass. I got my birth certificate. I had immediate citizenship. I got this and that. But somewhere, if I go back in time, some ancestor of mine who first came here was illegal from the eyes of people who were living here. And like we move forward in life and we don't look backwards, but it's like, well, what if we did look backwards? What if we asked them, and what would that mean? And what does that mean? And that kind of thing. And it just complicates shit in a way that none of us want to be complicated, to be frank with you. So go maybe a little further. Yeah, I don't really have go ahead. What question do you have for me?
My question would be is like, do you think that our immigration issue is comparable to that of Europe with the mass migration of Muslims from the Middle East over to Europe, and do you think that we can learn from that in any way?
Wait, say that again. That's really, speak louder if you could, because yeah.
I was wondering that if you think that we could learn from the mass migration of Muslims from the Middle East into Europe because they're having an immigration problem as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a it continue. There's a lot we can learn, and I think some of the origin of both streams of immigration are very similar, right? And to a degree, some of the what do you think is a similarity? By the way, let me ask you. Do you have an
This
idea?
is like between us and Europe.
Yep, yep.
I think a similarity would be is obviously you know, foreign citizens coming into our country. I think the biggest difference is that a lot of European countries are doing it better. I know at least in Ireland that they actually have a process in place for granting citizenship to those immigrants. A lot of them actually open businesses, especially in Dublin city centre. It's a big thing
Yep.
there, especially with the whole Brexit thing. You know, Ireland's property values have skyrocketed. So I think that personally, you know, the fact that they actually have a process for it and they're not just being put into, you know, internment camps and stuff like that is definitely something we could learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's an issue right there, right? So Ireland, for one, brought in lots of immigrants from Eastern Europe, in particular Poland, and so many immigrants, right? Because they needed labor. And the Irish, you know, because there's so much out migration from Ireland. People like your dad, bro, who like in his generation, like so many Irish left, and then like when he leaves, they got to replace him with somebody. Ireland's a small country, and you need labor, and so now we're going to replace it. So we're going to bring somebody in, let's say from Poland, to do the job that your dad would have done. And so one of the things that we see here is that that you know some of the European nations have brought many immigrants in because they need them to fill positions. And so similar to the United States, we bring a certain number of immigrants in, but we also allow undocumented immigrants into the United States. The reason we don't just automatically round people up, because you think we could, right? Just round people up, man, send them home. But we don't do that because certain groups in the United States, i.e. business in particular, want them here. And so it's like, okay, you know, and so that's part of the issue that we struggle with.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I know some businesses are actually going to them instead of bringing them to here, just for tax purposes. I forget which company is opening a headquarters in Mexico City, rather than bringing illegal, undocumented
Mhm.
immigrants. They're actually just building businesses there because it's more tax efficient, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, definitely. It is lots of it's so, man, well, the one thing that you mentioned, also a similarity with Europe and the United States, we're gonna talk about with our next volunteer, but the issue is, for me, let me just summarize this whole piece, this whole segment. For me, when I think about immigration, just as an American, as a white American, as an American who has ancestors who were immigrants at some point, right? Um, I just feel a certain humility, right? Again, I don't, just because American Indians say X, I don't automatically say, oh, well, it's true because they said it. But it reminds me that I shouldn't try to be the know-it-all. I shouldn't try to, maybe I should be a little more humble, a little more open to seeing the complexity of the issues, because I too am in this place that's really deeply disturbing. To know that the land that I'm standing on was the land that was taken from other people, the land that you're on right now, the land that your home is on, right? That that for all of us, right? It's taken from other people. And just because it was many generations ago, just because I've forgotten about it, it doesn't mean that they have forgotten about it. You know what I mean? Like if I take, so Sean, like if you steal my wallet and you give the wallet to your child, you steal money you steal my house, right? And you give it to your children and I can't get it back. And I tell my children, hey, that guy Sean stole my house and he gave it to his kids. And then your kids give it to their kids. And then my grandkids know about it. And it's like, hey, well, that was our house, and now this Sean's grandkids have it. And like, what doesn't make it, by the time it gets to our grandkids, it doesn't make it okay. Just because it happened a long time in the past, it's still like nothing's going to happen because nobody's going to come along and say, hey, Sean's grandkids, you got to give them the house back. That's never going to happen, but it still is a problem. So that's, I think, where I'm always at, like, let me just be a little humble on this.
No, definitely. I do have to agree. And I think a bigger part of that is the our attitude towards immigrants. I know my dad experienced a lot of like hateful things happen to him when he first moved here, especially now being in the corporate world. He still takes classes to help get rid of his accent so people don't hear it when he's in meetings, stuff like that. He's been called like Mick, Patty, stuff like that. Potato farmer, really anything.
Yeah.
I think like you were saying with the whole, stop Asian hate. I think that's the real issue. Rather than us squatting on, not our land. I think it's the mindset of us towards immigrants.
Yeah, it's a mindset, and we're in a class. Hey. Anyway, Sean, thanks for that. I love your comments. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Just a final thing, and this goes out to Sean. The Irish experience some of the worst discrimination of all white groups in the United States, and in fact, even in the mid 19th century, a lot of times the big plantations would bring boatloads or trainfuls of Irish workers into the South to work in the really dangerous areas like the swamps, where they were going to lose a lot of people from yellow fever because they couldn't afford to and didn't want to have their own slaves die. And so they would bring Irish workers because an Irish life had no value to it whatsoever. And so, that's just that kind of history. Hey, why don't we, anyway, that was awesome. I really appreciate that. So listen, class, remember, this is a thinking class. We're here to think. So Lauren, why don't you put your camera on and hop in. Hey, but before we start with Lauren, the second top hat question is going up right now, my friends. And give it like 15 seconds or whenever, it'll be there. Don't miss it. Well, Lauren, make sure you do it too while they bring you on the screen. Okay, so Lauren, where are you from?
I'm from Princeton, New Jersey.
Princeton, New Jersey. Yeah, the great state of New Jersey. All right, awesome. From the city itself or the town itself?
No, I'm like 15, 20 minutes south, but I went to high school in Princeton, so I just always say Princeton.
Yeah, it's easier. All right, well, top hats up. Make sure you do it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
What do you know about the border wall?
Actually, my school started this thing where in May, you do one class and one class only. And I did a class on border and immigration issues. It was called Immigration and Identity. So I went to the Arizona border, met with a bunch of people, crossed the border into Mexico. So I know like a little bit more than I used to about the issue.
Dude, awesome. You know far more than probably 90% of all Americans just because you did that. You know what I mean? So how much wall is there? Like, do you have any idea how long the border is with Mexico? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact length, but I know that the actual wall blocks like not even close to the full wall. Like it doesn't really help that much where it's at right now.
Yeah, I got you. Right. So a lot of times we see this with politicians. They make these big proclamations because they want to get voted in. And, we go with the simple ideas. People vote for simple ideas. When they think something's really simple and it can get done really easily, that's who we vote for because of course we do, right? Oh, this is really easy. We're going to build a wall and like, okay, got it. I want to vote for that person. Nobody's going to vote for me. Now imagine me like on a stage talking about issues and trying to be elected. I'd be like, well, on one hand, it's complicated over here because you got these 15 issues that come into play. And then but I can see this point too. And well, we need to sit down and have some really valuable conversations. It's like people get this MFer out of here, right? So do you have any idea? So, okay, so it's almost 2,000 miles long, the border with Mexico, which is pretty long, right? Do you have any, so all you know is that a very small amount of the wall has been built. Do you know how much
Yeah.
got built during the Trump administration?
I don't know if any got built.
Yeah, a little bit got built.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Here, we're gonna put the numbers up, and well, hang on, let me ask you before we do that. Do you know what's the problem with building a border wall with Mexico?
I know that the cost was like a lot, and I know that it was a problem. I know that the only thing that I really know about is the cost and the ethics behind it.
Why do you think it was so costly? Do you remember why?
Well, the fact that it was so long, and I think the materials that they were using to build it.
Yeah, and where they're building it. Here, let me show you a couple things, right? So first off, if you could put those numbers up. So about almost 2,000 miles, and since 2017, so there were about 406 miles, a little over 400 miles that were actually old wall that got reinforced. It was just fencing, and they reinforced it, right? And that was primarily because that was the easiest part to get to. And there's 47 miles of new fencing. So really not very much has happened during the Trump administration at all, right? But a lot, actually. I mean, that's a lot. You can't do this thing overnight. So on one hand, you could say not very much happened, but on the other hand, actually a lot happened because, we're like almost a quarter finished with this thing, right? But here's the issue. I want to show you all a couple of these photos. One of the reasons it's so costly is because this is the land. Look, in order to get this wall, they had to barrel through a mountain. By the way, for American Indians, all this land is sacred. So when you blow through a mountain like that, you're blowing up a sacred mountain. So understand that can be an issue. And look, you got to, not only you have to get down here. All the materials have to come down here. All of the construction materials, the bulldozers, all the equipment, this is not land. This is not flat land. This is not open desert where you just drive across the desert and you say like, okay, we got this. So go to the next slide and we'll show a couple of these. Here's a piece of wall that got built. Look, notice there's no wall here and there's no wall over here. Just this little section of wall got built. Now, I have no idea why the hell that got built as it did, but it did. And here it is. I don't know what it's doing. It's not doing anything really. But understand, look at this, right? When you tell Americans, hey, we're just going to build a wall, first off, we're going to build 2,000 plus, not just 2,000, but we're going to build 4,000 to 5,000 miles of roads, because it's not just the road along the wall. You have to have all the roads getting down there. And then here showing, wait, hang on. And so this is one of the problems. Okay, back to Lauren. Lauren, where are people coming from? Who are the people coming? What do you remember?
Okay, so we went to ranchers who have property along the Arizona border.
Yeah.
And when we were talking to them, they deal with a lot of the drug cartels.
Yeah.
And they've had drugs like dropped from planes onto their property.
Yeah.
And they've had run-ins with a lot of drug cartels crossing. So that is a majority of like what I saw in like the middle, I think, or like not in as common areas.
Yeah.
But then we also went to certain water drops.
Which by the way is a huge problem, right? Drug cartel. That's not even like, it's a holy shit problem. But go ahead. You also did what?
It was bad. We also went to like water drop places.
Yep.
Where the certain groups go and like drop water, and we went there as well, which that was a big problem that we learned about. But
and why is that a problem?
Well, so half of the problem was like, okay. Half the problem is like not encouraging illegal crossing, but kind of saying like it's okay. And then half of the problem was also that there is known groups and sometimes even border patrol that goes to the known places where they drop the water and slash the water bottles, empty the cans and stuff. So basically they force the people traveling to like go starving or be totally dehydrated, which is just like unethical in my opinion. So that caused a big problem as well.
Well, yeah, right. So it wouldn't be unethical if you think like, well, we're going to empty all this water out that people are putting on humanitarian reasons, right? We're going to put it out. We're going to help people because you don't want people to die in the desert. But if you do that and then more people come, then you're enabling it, right? So somehow you got to stop all that so people back where in the places of origin hear about that and then they don't come. But that's not exactly what happens. So let me be clear about something. The drug cartels are an issue always, right? The vast majority of people coming, however, are not in drug cartels. They are people who are economic and sometimes political migrants, right? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but very much economic migrants, right? So then the question to you I have for you is, okay, you got really poor people. What's their stories? What's their
we met with a transgender woman who was illegally in the country, and she was really poor in her country. I think she was from El Salvador or something, and people were out to kill her, and she knew that it was dangerous, and she crossed like I think 3 times, even though she knew the risk of like dying and stuff. And we talked with some other illegal immigrants, and a lot of them would have come over no matter what, because whatever situation they were escaping, they had a high chance of dying either way. So a lot of them were really in search of like a job, or just came over alone just to send money back to their families. Like they had, like 3 children or something and their wife back home that they wanted to send money to. And they were going to cross as many times as it would have taken to be able to get that life for their family.
So here's a wait, hang on one second. Hey, we're going to do the top edit at the end of this segment. So listen, so here's one of the, let me talk about this for a second, okay? Hey, can you put up this next slide? So I'm just going to say a couple things about Guatemala. In the past couple of years, I've been really invested in the issue, what's going on in Guatemala. So this is Guatemala. This is lush land in Guatemala when the rains are coming and everything's happening, right? But climate change has created these droughts in Guatemala that are really unprecedented. And so here's another slide. So you mentioned people who are really poor, right? So here's like about 1 million people in the Central Highlands in Guatemala are in a deep food crisis. So the corn, what you saw in the previous slide, this is what it looks like here, right? So now we have from there to here, and go to the next slide. And what we see here in this area, Chimaltenango, 67% suffer from chronic malnutrition. So here's this family, right? Chronic malnutrition. So what's this guy, what's he going to do? He's got to feed his family. Like, what's he going to do? And what would you do? What would I do? Right? What would any of us do? Right? Including the people who are, holding the flags up saying like, build the wall, build it higher, build it taller. Really, what will we do? Well, we're going to do what this guy did. Doesn't make it like, well, just because he's starving and his family's starving, we should just open the doors and let him in. But understand, that's where it's coming from. And that makes this real complex moral issue. If we go to the next slide, because chronic malnutrition. So here's the wife and children of this next gentleman, and that's their house there. This is a Guatemalan family. And here's this gentleman right here, right? So here's the father. And go to the next slide. And one of the things that I will say is for most Americans, look at him, right? So a lot of people who have never talked, this is his land. So look at his corn. He's going to feed his family on this corn. And not only is he going to feed his family, he's actually going to collect the seeds to plant the next harvest, all from this corn, which is not going to happen. So look, what I would say about him is, see, I know this guy. Like, I don't know him personally, but I know him. I've met hundreds and hundreds of him. People who look like him. I've spoken with him. I've been in their houses. I see them. I see them not only in South America, but I see them here in the United States. I talk to them. He's not dangerous to me. If you only listen to they send their worst of their people, their rapists, their drug dealers, their criminals, their everything, then that's who you're going to see with this guy. He's going to look really dangerous. He's not dangerous to me. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a son. He's a human being, probably a Christian. He's a human being who's trying to survive and trying to help his family survive. And in all likelihood, He's as nice of a human being as anybody that I would pick out on the street or anyone I would pick out from my class. And when that's what I see when I see him. And so one of the problems when we create this rhetoric about, and we can bring Lauren back on, when we create this rhetoric about immigration, then we only see somebody like him as a bad person. And then the question, Lauren, to you is, let me ask you this question. Wait, hang on. What do you think about that? You met some people like him, right?
I did. And for us, like my teacher did a very good job at showing us both sides, telling us every side of the story. We met with Border Patrol, met with other people as well. But the hardest thing was the fact that when we met with the people who owned the land, they had a lot of run-ins with the drug cartels and the really dangerous people and the people who like pointed guns at them. So they had that mindset of, well, we need to stop everything. They offered their land to Border Patrol so that they could be closer to the border and have like easier thing. They were going to charge them like $2 a year. But then when we actually went to court and watched people get deported as well. And a majority of those people were like desperate for like their lives. Like they really just wanted to get a job and stuff. And I feel like it's really hard to look at it or really determine even. Like at the end of the trip, we were all just confused because there's so many issues with it. Like you can't say like build a wall or not build a wall or change the laws or not change them because it's so complicated. Like there are the drug cartels, but there's also the innocent people who are just trying to get a better life or just trying to earn money. So it's like one of those things where like you can't really identify immigrants as one group of people because it'll never be one group of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear that. To hear you say that, because it's really nice to hear you say you left more confused, because you should leave more confused. I'm more confused today than I was yesterday, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was your age. I'm way more confused now. I used to think I had answers, and now I realize I was just an idiot back then. So here, I mean, I'm still an idiot, because a year from now, I'll look back to me today and I'll think, yeah, you were still an idiot, so like, that's okay. That's good. That's why I teach, by the way. So if you can't do anything useful, then you teach, right? So, but my question is, what responsibility do you think the United States has for the conditions in Central America and in Mexico and in South America? Like, do you know how much of our history, of US history and foreign policy in these countries are you aware of that you could say, well, here's the ways, let me list out like 4 or 5 reasons why things are the way they are in Central America.
Okay. I do remember we learned about one thing because, we sat down one night and discussed what we saw for the day and stuff. And we asked everyone like what we would change about the immigration laws. And we had learned that day about when people came over to like California to help in the fields, and they would like pick the raspberries or something or whatever it was, or strawberries, and then they'd go back to Mexico for the night, and they'd only like work in America or in the US. And we talked about that a lot and how that probably definitely affected the relationship between like our country and Mexico and stuff, and how that like allowed for a lot of crossing and understanding, and but again caused more confusion. But that was pretty much like the only big thing that I remember definitely knowing about the interaction between two countries. But well,
okay, awesome. It's good that you still know more than 80% of other Americans probably. I would say this: there's a long history, and so it's really worth doing a little bit of investigation into how the conditions in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, how the conditions came to be. And what we're not 100% responsible, but the degree to which we are is really worth looking at. Because, when you help to create certain conditions for people, and then we look at them when we point fingers at them for how it is, and it's like, wait a minute, there's 3 fingers pointing back at us. Like we could look at that. So when I see people coming from like in Guatemala, I know the history of Guatemala. I'm like, well, we probably should be thinking about some of that history. But hey, listen, yo, I'm so awesome that you came on at on this segment. It's really cool to know to have that. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. So thus far, Sean and Lauren, awesome, man. Hey, so now, hey, top hat's going up. Niche, tell me when I say now. Now, man, top hat is going up now. Hey, we have another special guest. I'm gonna if you could put the photo up. Once again, the first photo. Top hat is up, my friends. Make sure you're looking at it and dealing with it. Hey, Jeff, if you can put because I've been teaching for many years. I've had the opportunity to work with, as you have an idea, lots and lots of students, and thousands and thousands. I mean, I've gotten to know really thousands. Can we? Yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, put up the photo of Brian, the first photo. Yeah, there we go, man. There he is. Hey, wait, actually, okay, so Brian, I'm gonna have you explain what this photo is when you come on. Esquire, there he is. And then I want you to, and then go ahead and put up the next photo that I found somewhere. I don't know where it was. So you can, bring Brian on. Go ahead and tell us what's anyway, hang on, we're gonna bring you on in a second. Live. There we are. Yo, welcome, man.
Hey.
Welcome back to Social 119.
No, it's great. Thank you so much for for this opportunity and those flashbacks. So that first photo was a Social 119 class project back from, I think that was either 99 or 2000. I don't know which, but we had to take a picture with somebody of another race or another ethnicity, and then bring that photo home with us and say, hey, this is my girlfriend, this is my boyfriend, if as an experiment. And then the second photo is my wife from a couple years back, a couple summers ago.
So there it goes. Yeah. All right. Awesome, man. That was actually a really risque project. Remember that? Like, do you remember what happened in your family? Did you have a cool conversation?
Yeah, it was.
Wait, so you went to your family, like at the Thanksgiving dinner table, say, hey, this is my girlfriend, want to show you.
Yeah, my parents never really had much concern. They always just wanted to make sure I was happy. My grandmother, I remember having more of an interrogation. But I have to say, all in all, again, it's a different time. Times
different world, man.
But
hey, listen. So tell. So why are you here, man? So you've done some work with immigration, right? You and I were talking, and the issue is that the issue of children in detention came up, and you said, "Hey, I'm doing some pro bono work. If you want to have a conversation, can you tell us what you were doing?"
Sure. I was driving one day. I heard on the radio people looking for attorney volunteers who can help take cases for families that were separated at the southern border. It was a pro bono organization. I had time, and I contacted the organization, went through a training, got a team of attorneys at my law firm together, and we took a case. A father and daughter that left El Salvador. I can get into detail. I mean, essentially, it was an asylum application, but they have a story. But it was a lot of what's being said here, and just to echo a lot of what Lauren said. It's a situation where and those photos you put up as well of the farmer and his family. I mean, it's just. Mario was a police. He was a police officer, former police officer, who got involved in a shootout with MS-13. Testified against the gang. The gang followed his daughter, his 8-year-old daughter, took pictures, came to his house in the middle of the night. I mean, he really, in addition to not having money and having worked very hard all his life to actually enter, the police training in El Salvador, to be part of the national police force, while his friends were doing other things. I mean, it took a lot of integrity, hard work. I mean, he was really an incredible guy. And what he went through, what his daughter went through, what they went through, what their families going through. I mean, it's just, it's an honor to be able to represent.
So they threatened him in El Salvador. They MS-13. So they threatened him. And so he came up through Mexico and he got to the border. He crossed over the border and then went directly to La Migra.
Turned himself in. Understood that there's a legal process for asylum and followed that legal process. Didn't try to sneak into the country, didn't try to evade capture. He and his daughter walked up to Border Patrol and said, "We're here to seek asylum," and put himself and his daughter and their lives at the mercy of the U.S. government.
So asylum cases, and then you've worked, or your colleagues have worked in some of the cases with children who are in detention. So
my client, the young girl Elena, was in detention. I mean, she was the family. She and Mario were separated from each other immediately. She was sent, 8-year-old child by herself, flown to New York, to a facility in New York, while Mario was sent to New Mexico. And this was 67 days they were apart.
So who was with her for 67 days?
There are, as you might imagine, the Border Protection, U.S. Immigration Services, ICE, there are case workers that are assigned, they were essentially jail wardens more than anything, to try to just make sure the population is where it needs to be and everybody's accounted for. As soon as you cross over, you enter the system, you're given an alien number or an A number.
Yeah.
They had consecutive A numbers, and that's all that mattered to the government.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. So let me do this for a second. I want to bring on our Stephen. If you guys can bring Stephen and Brian on at the same time, and then the three of us are going to have a conversation. So give us just a second. We will do that. Hey, team, Nish, while we're waiting, just know my earpiece isn't working at this point, so we're just going to top it at the very end, okay? Hey, so Stephen, where are you? You are a law minor, right? Isn't that what you said? Pre-law minor or something like that?
It's like a business law minor, but it's within like the business school. So yeah.
Dude, awesome, man. So you might be in Brian's position one day.
We'll see.
All right. So do you have any questions for him yet? I mean, we're gonna keep talking. Do you have any questions yet of anything that came up?
Throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, just from what we just said. Anything?
Oh, I just think it's pretty interesting. Kind of sounds like some behind the scenes sort of stuff.
Okay. All right. So hang tight. So I want you to come up with a couple questions that you have. So Brian, so one of the things, let's talk about children in detention. How is it that children end up here? Like, how do they end up at the border? You gave us one example of a gentleman who is seeking political asylum because he's in danger of being assassinated in El Salvador for testifying against a gang, right? How do children end up here, man? Because, for example, in February last month, there were almost 10,000 young immigrants, young migrants, young. And when we say young, when we say children, that means the vast majority are 15, 16, and 17 years old who end up at the border and they're in detention. Like, how is that? Where are they coming from and why are they coming?
I mean, there's, everybody has their own story, but I think what you tend to see is, it's the same with Elena. As a young girl, young woman in that area, there's a sex trade that the gang also would have kidnapped her, and she would, be sold into a form of slavery. That affects plenty of young girls. Young boys are heavily recruited by the gang. There's not a lot of places to go for help. The government, the police force, I mean, they're powerless. And, it really comes down to what is the best hope for this child's future. And a lot of times it's parents saying, look, we can't afford to leave the land. We're too old, we're too sick, we can't do this. But there's a better life for you if you are able to do, certain things. There's a number of reasons. A lot of it is just, it really is at this point in my mind. And let me just say, my opinions and what I say here is mine own. That doesn't necessarily the opinion of my law firm, but it's it comes down to economics. It comes down to economic insecurity and just a hope for a better life. It's not. We can get into this too, but this isn't illegal immigration. There's nothing illegal about what's being done in these circumstances, and I think that's really an unfortunate phrase that has taken hold, is this illegal immigrant, illegal alien. It's just false. It's just false. And if I may, just for 1 second, the U.S. Constitution, the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment are very specific, and they ensure certain rights and protections, not just for citizens. Citizens are entitled to privileges and immunities of citizenship. That's in the 14th Amendment. But the Constitution provides due process, equal protection to persons. And due process means that there's a process that is followed according to law. If somebody's going to take your life, liberty, or property, you're entitled to this process. So the Constitution doesn't say that's only for citizens, it's persons. And last I checked, it comes down to this sort of this fundamental misunderstanding of what is illegal and why. Crossing a border and declaring, that you're seeking asylum is accepted under international law. United States asylum laws require that. There's nothing illegal about this type of immigration.
No, so the issue though is political asylum is different than economic necessity or something, right? And that's what we're battling over here.
Well, right. So asylum.
So then the issue becomes, then the issue becomes, okay, so if someone's coming because they're afraid of being, abducted into sexual slavery or being killed or afraid of starving to death, right? That's where we start. That's where we're starting to parse through this, right? Am I right? And that's what people are struggling with so much.
Correct. So asylum is intended for folks who have a credible fear that stems from something about them, something that's called immutable, something that can't be changed about them. That's persecution or fear of persecution.
Okay.
So, and persecution takes several forms: withholding law, withholding food, withholding economic opportunity.
I do have a question.
Yep, go ahead, Mom.
So, it sounds like there's a line between law and political, and then the humanity side. Do you have a specific line where this doesn't become a law problem, becomes just a humility? And is your view different than your law firms?
No, and I say that, and that's a good question. Obviously I speak for myself. I have, these are my cases. I can't be speaking for every attorney in my law firm or every person that we work with or that we represent. But I handled this pro bono case. I have the experience, going to ICE, for a year and dealing with these people. The way I see it is, the law is, and for somebody who wants to study the law, the answer is always, it depends. What does the law say? How does the law, what does the law require? And it's always a fact-based determination. It's going to depend on the situation. So, I think what ends up happening is you get this loud sort of vocal characterization of people as being, criminals or rapists or, gang members who want to infest the streets with drugs, when in reality, the vast majority of these folks have legitimate asylum claims, are fleeing persecution, fleeing situations that, and Sam mentioned a little while ago about, the policies in the Western Hemisphere, and especially stemming from the United States and over the decades that, dating back to the early 1900s and 1800s, and U.S. policy towards Central and South America, it causes a lot of the problems that these countries are facing. I mean, I woke up this morning in a certain place because that's where I went to sleep last night. And there's this process of things that flow, and we're dealing today with the ramifications of things that have happened a long time ago. So when I deal with my clients, I look at their case and I give them a recommendation of, and even with this pro bono matter, they have a valid asylum claim, and they have every right to petition the government, to file their pleadings, to do what they need to do to appear before a judge and have their claim heard. Not just my clients, but thousands of other people that are similarly situated, that have the same type of situation, fleeing the same type of area. So it intertwines. It's not just that the law is one thing and then the humanity of everything is something else. What it comes down to, the law says for asylum, do you have a credible fear? Are you afraid? And if so, is it credible? You're just pretending to be afraid. And if you're able to demonstrate that you have fear and it's actual fear, then you go to the next, well, what is that fear? What does it stem from? Is it something about you that you can't change? Or is it that, you I don't know, stole the mayor's mail one day or whatever,
or that you don't have food on your table and you could go get a different job or something. I don't know.
Correct. Yeah. So
Steven,
the law.
Do you have another question? We're going to go and we're going to keep going.
From that now.
So can you, okay, you guys, the two of you, watch the stream, okay? I'm going to put a couple of photos up. And so once again, you can put that first photo up with that. We have 3 of children. 85% of the children who are coming from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. So here's a shot of children behind fencing, right? So these are, and then look at here's another one. So there we go. Here's a detention center. So these are, some detention centers are just children. Others are children and adults. And those, by the way, it's cold, right? So, and next one. So here's another detention center. Notice the soccer, it's a soccer field, right? So it's like, these are people that could be living, they could be there a long, long, long time. And so it's not like, we're not just some of them, we're not going to just throw you behind bars. We're going to provide something, but nonetheless, right? So Stephen, what question do you have when you see those photos? You got all these children in detention and adults, right? But now we're just going to focus on children. So you can, what question do you have?
My question is how can these people, I'm still caught up in that line between like the law and like helping people. Like, I find it so hard. How can you distinguish like who gets this help and who doesn't get this help when it looks like so many people need it and they're in terrible situations? Like, how do you, like, it's so hard to, like, how can you decide that who's to receive these benefits and asylums and stuff?
Yeah. Brian,
I have this question. I have the same question. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah,
I think that's really going to be the point, is to find answers with such limited resources, not just in this country, but around, there's limited resources, and you're 100% right, Stephen. I mean, there are a lot of deserving people.
No, go ahead.
Where do you get the resources? How do you?
So Brian, listen, I want to say a couple of things, and I want you to respond as a lawyer, and Stephen, I want you to come up with a question, all right? So one of the problems is, and this is the issue with children, y'all, right? When children arrive at the border, they might be with an adult, And, we separate them, right, from adults and children. And one reason is, well, we don't know that the adult is their family member. The adult might say, this is my son, or this is my nephew, or this is whoever, but my brother, but we don't know that, first off. So now they get separated, right? We can start running DNA tests on the border, but that's a lot of DNA tests to run on kids. Then the child comes, and let's say the child has somebody who's already here in the United States, and let's say they're living without documentation, and the child comes, well, my father is living in Chicago. And then the immigration can't just get on the phone and call the father in Chicago. And here's his phone number. They're going to call the father in Chicago and say, hey, your son is here. Come pick him up. Because the father can't come and pick him up because he'll get picked up and sent back home. So now we're dealing with this child. And Brian, this is where I want you to point, like, the law in the United States is like, you can't just turn a child loose. We can't send the child back, like go back to Guatemala, walk through all of Mexico and get back to Guatemala, because the children, these are children, right? And so our society is saying we can't do that. We can't just put the child on a plane and say, hey, the easiest thing would be to just go see your father in Chicago, because we don't want to take care of you. Like, he'll take care of you, right? But we can't do that. And so we're stuck in this place of like, so you got all these children, tens of thousands of children. And then, so what do? We just put them in detention, put them behind a cage, put them where else are we going to put them? You know what I mean? Like, what are we going to do? So this becomes like this thing. We don't have like Hilton hotels and daycare centers, right? Like, fuck, Brian. So
this has been a perpetual problem. I mean, the Flores settlement was a class action lawsuit that was filed in the 80s, in the 1980s. And this settlement agreement, I think, was dated to the late 90s. And this settlement agreement was supposed to be replaced by regulations that Immigration and Naturalization Services was supposed to write by 2001. Well, guess what? The INS doesn't even exist anymore. That got terminated. It was part of the Department of Justice. After 2001, you have the Department of Homeland Security, which now oversees U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and Border Protection. So this settlement agreement still is the operative document, and it's not very powerful. It's not a law. It's not a regulation. It's a court enforced settlement agreement, and all this
which forces us, which says to the American government, when children arrive on your soil, you have to take care of them. Is that what it says?
It sets a baseline, minimum standards, using this principle, what's the best interest of a child. So it basically says you're going to detain a child within 20 days. That child has to be provided for, either sent to a parent, a guardian, a sponsor, or an organization, or a facility, a licensed facility that complies with the minimum standards that are laid out by this settlement agreement. You have to have access to a toilet. You have to be able to, get fresh water. I mean, these are minimum standards. And the problem is the government, whichever administration it is, it's been going on since the 80s, and prior to that, this needs to be addressed. And that's really what we're stuck in, is we don't have a system in place that makes any sense. We have lives hanging in the balance. And we have a lot of good people working, at Border Protection and in ICE, and that want to do the right thing, that want to enforce the laws fairly and equitably, and want to make sure that these kids are taken care of. But when you look in the bank account, what's available for that? There's nothing. And it's a perpetual problem. And you're right. It's it's a crisis when it's politically convenient, and it's a situation when it's not. And it needs to be addressed. And that's part of this, is just, the pro bono opportunities that are out there for attorneys and just for community members to get involved and to reach out and to try to find ways to help them. So
I'm going to say something, and then Stephen, I want you to ask a question. So like, when I think about Biden the other day, 2 nights ago, he said he spoke to people in Mexico, Central America, South America, and he basically said, stop coming. This is his solution, right? Just like, which I don't know what else you do, but he's just stop coming. I'm going to follow. Like, things haven't changed since the Trump administration. So because people have this idea, well, Trump's no longer in power, Biden's in power. So like, okay, we can come and we'll cross the border. We'll hear an asylum claim, whatever it is, right? And Biden is saying, stop coming. But people don't, when you're starving or when you're, your life is at risk or you're starving or you're hungry, you're trying to feed your children. Remember, 67% of Guatemalans, hang on. Let's go to camera one for a second, right? 67% of Guatemalans are in that particular region are malnourished. It's like, what are you going to just stop coming? I'm not going to not come just because of that, So, Stephen, do you have a question? And if you don't have a question, I have a question for you.
My question, you kind of answered it, but I thought of it while like he was saying like, what's the better way to pool our resources to help these people, and what's like the most efficient way to pay for it? Because the average person wants to help these people, but the average person also doesn't want to be the one paying for it.
So listen,
like,
I want to ask you
questions.
that question. What would you do? You're king of the world, man. You just became king of the United States. What would you do? We would never let a 76ers fan be king of the United States. Let me just say that out front. But nonetheless, right?
Man, tough question. What would I do? I guess I would. I'm king of the world. I'm borrowing money from another country that I don't have to repay and giving it to our immigrants. Wait, do I have like ultimate power? I don't know.
But then more come. It's like, they're giving away money.
All right, well, cut it off right now and then allow for so many to come each year, documented. And I know that's like not great for business, but I guess slow things down until we can figure out a better plan. Just slow it down because we need some time to think.
Well, we had since when did the Flores Agreement, Brian, say that we were supposed to come up with a plan 4 years ago?
2001. Yeah, by 2001.
Yeah. Okay. So we're 20 years late.
I'm assembling the best thinkers, and no one's leaving the room until we got something better.
Yeah. Needless to say, bro, probably your grandkids would be talking about their grandfather who was king of the U.S. at that one point, and he still didn't come up with anything. So, but nonetheless, Brian, do you have the kind of a final? We have 3 minutes left, and the pack bag's going to go up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody, when you hear the term illegal immigrants or illegal alien, try to unpack that for yourself. So that when you're in conversation with others, you could be more precise about exactly what the situation is. Are they asylum applicants? Are they simply undocumented? Do they have legal status? That, and just if you have any interest in being involved in this area, KIND, Kids in Need of Defense, supportkind.org is the organization I worked with. This is not an easy, there are no easy solutions. You'll find that over the years, many other things. The complicated nature of life is what makes it so interesting. And these are the skills that Sam is trying to help you guys hone in on: critical thinking, to unpack what might just be, otherwise very superficial levels of knowledge. So, you're all doing the right thing. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Sam. Thanks very much.
Dude. Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. Do you feel like you're dumber now than you were when you were an undergrad?
I get dumber every day.
Yeah, dude. I know, man. God, I just feel like I know so much less. See what you have to look forward to? Right.
Yeah.
I feel like,
I mean, I gotta tell you, it's a lot, but it's fun. I mean, there's so much to know, and you can get overwhelmed, but just keep at it.
It's hard for me. Hey, top hats up, by the way, everybody.
I feel like I have to think about what I'm thinking about now. Like, I have to think about what I already know. I don't even know what to think now.
Yeah, the thing you want to do is think about everything that you don't know. It's really, yeah. Hey, Brian, what's one thing you've learned about being a white man? So you're Jewish and Italian, is that right? You're not.
You know what, Sam? I did 23andMe. So I'm Ashkenazi, I'm Southern Italian, and I am Western Asian. And that breaks down into from Cyprus. I have family from Cyprus and from the Levant.
Dude, okay. So, what have you learned being married to a Black woman in the United States?
Every day is a struggle, and every day is an indignity. You learn a lot about white privilege, the things that you don't have to think about, the things that you don't have to encounter. And a lot of times they might seem like little minor details, but death by 1,000 cuts, the indignity of life and the sort of the way life is structured for a certain type of person, a person that looks a certain way, thinks a certain way, acts a certain way, you really start to realize that, how difficult it is to be in skin that, when nude looks like white, that's the word, that's you're in a world where it's not meant for you, and you're reminded of that day in and day out, and it's just it's unfortunate. And it's awful,
Yeah, and you're okay. Thank you, man. Thanks for that, Stephen. Thank you, and thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It was a long time coming that we had this conversation here. We'll have it again for sure. We are at the magic hour, at the 4:20, my friend. 4:20. The magic hour. All right, man. Hey, everybody. Thanks for participating in the class. I do appreciate it, and thanks for holding on. And we will see you on Thursday. I think next Tuesday we're gonna have another really good class, and I have an email coming out to the class. So thanks. Class is officially over. You can stay on Zoom for a hot second if you want, but be well. Be well. That goes out to the, what's his name? I forget who it is. One of our viewers. I wonder why I didn't say be well last class. So be well.
I feel like I just got grilled. that was hard.
Nah, you did great, man. That's complicated. That's really the thing you learn, whether